Hello, and welcome to Generally Speaking. I'm your host, Bill Lawrence. Today's Wednesday, September 24th, 2025. If you're new to the channel, please like, subscribe, and hit the notify bell and enjoy all the other persons who get that one of a kind of experience you can only get watching this channel. Let's start off with the right and the left and who is worse than who. I'm a lefty, so you can kind of guess what I'm going to say. The And I have to bring receipts. What kind of receipts? All right. So you give evidence, you give examples. Now, I'm going to be pointing out famous people. Nancy Mace, someone in our administration, a Republican. Now, I'm sure that if you look at just generally TikToks or YouTubes, you could find probably people from the left, from the right, saying whatever you want to look for. Find someone's, saying everybody should love, and find others who say they should burn in heck. In heck, I try to be, family friendly here. They should burn in heck, and but I want to talk about the noteworthies, the people who you see in your face and are supposed to be the role models. All right. So we've got Nancy Mace talking about a fellow colleague in the Congress, Ilhan Omar, to be exactly, person in the Democratic side. And she's saying, we would love to see you deported to Somalia. Yeah. You don't hear these kind of things from the Democrats talking to the right. Stephen Miller, Trump's deputy chief of staff, he says that the Democratic Party is devoted to the defense of hardened criminals, gangbangers, and illegal alien killers and terrorists. The Democratic Party is not a political party, it is a domestic extremist organization. These are the things that come out of Republicans' mouths. And yet, if you get a little snitch piece of anything looking like a criticism of the right, they want to bring out the pitchforks. They want to launch nuclear missiles. And these guys are so much worse. Trump, Trump, you don't like our religion? Then we don't want you in our country. All right, I don't like his religion. I'm not a Christian. I'm an atheist. I don't like any religions. I think they all believe in ghosts. I got no reason to believe in anything, no reasonable reason. They have reasons that don't make any sense. So, but I mean, these are the things they say. Get out of our country. The left doesn't say these kind of things. All right, what do we got? Another person I was watching, her name is Liz Oyer. She's a former pardon attorney for the Department of Justice. And so she follows Department of Justice kind of things, and she's talking about the terrible direction the Department of Justice is going. Really, any place you shine a light on the Trump administration, it's a terrible direction that is going. So, but for her point of view, she's talking about Trump, his appointment of personal attorneys to run the DOJ. All of the people that have worked for him, the mass firings of career experts, people have been there their whole lives. Fire them, get them out. The removal of the ethics, oversights, and professional responsibility departments. The transparency is gone. Illegal appointments of unqualified U.S. attorneys, and like that's not bad enough. It uses them to prosecute the president's enemies and protect his friends. You could almost say that. Well, don't they all do that? When a president gets in, don't they want people that favor what they favor? Yes, of course. But there are degrees, right? It's like the degree of a child stealing a piece of bubble gum and a bank robber, stealing a bank. They both robbed, but they're different degrees. And so the degrees to which Trump puts in these flunkies and unqualified, I mean, that right there is not something that all presidents do. This is what he's been doing. He's been picking the most unqualified of the unqualified. And putting them in the Justice Department's bad enough they're not qualified, but the thing is, he wants them to attack and prosecute people that aren't guilty of anything, and he wants to let go, people who are guilty of something. So she was just commenting on that. Liz Oyer. Her website's called the Oyer Lawyer. I thought it was funny. I love it when people can play on words like that. All right, what else? Oh, Trump, he's opening the Department of Justice for business. What do you mean for business? Well, if you've got a case pending, just hand him a little money. Use one of his preferred lawyers, like Pam Bondi's brother, right? Pam Bondi, the head of the Justice Department. Her brother's a lawyer. Well, if you hire him and bring a case before me, we'll make sure to throw it out. And if you're a big donor and hire whoever lawyer you want, we'll get the case thrown out. And just more example of this, there was a chief prosecutor in Virginia got fired because he was told to go after three different people that Trump didn't like: Letitia James, Adam Schiff, and James Comey, which, he would have been happy to do it if there was something there to work with, but there wasn't. Looked at the case, there's nothing here. I can't legitimately bring anything before the courts because we don't have anything. Trump's not happy, you're fired. I'll put someone else in, which he did. And so he's got a lackey that'll be happy to prosecute. Of course, what's the point? Even if you've got a lackey who wants to try and prosecute something, there's nothing there. So how can you prosecute it? And while that makes sense on the surface, if you start thinking about all the things the Trump administration does, where they just ignore whatever the courts say, they just do whatever they want to do. How much of a stretch of imagination is it to say that, yeah, there's nothing we can prove, but you know what? We're going to find you guilty. We're going to put you before a judge that says, yes, sir, whatever you want, sir. He'll say, you're guilty, and you're sentenced to life in prison and maybe deported to Uganda. So, this it's not impossible. Used to say, what's possible, what's not impossible. Nothing's impossible. And with this administration, it's really becoming like the case. Of Oh, just to another comment, wanted to say, Trump, about those three people he wanted to be prosecuted. His words are, "They're guilty as hell, and she better make it happen." Pam Bondi better make it happen. This is the attitude he has. His attitude is, all I have to do is say something, and it'll become magically true. And that's the way he thinks. All right, what? Here's something pretty horrifying. Someone trying to get favor with Trump, a congressperson in Florida, who's under investigations for uh, sexually harassing old girlfriends, threatening to put sexually explicit photos on the web of them if they don't do what he wants, and track and stalking. He wants to get out of all these issues. Another, go to Trump and help me, Trump. And what does he do to incur this favor? He says, I'm going to propose a bill. It's a draft bill. I don't think it's actually gone to the official position of it's now proposed before the members of the House and Congress to approve it. But it's a draft, and it's to allow Trump broad powers to go after narco terrorists in any country. And this fellow is Corey Mills in Florida. And so one more person trying to give Trump more unfettered power to do whatever he wants. H-1B visas. These are where people can come in because they're special needed. They've got skills not available to the corporation, as they put out advertisements, wanted workers, and nobody's applying. So they get people from other countries that can do the job. H-1B visas. There's also an H-2B. I don't know what it's all about, but at any rate. So the administration is trying to pull back on these things, and they're trying to charge you like $100,000 if you want an H-1B visa. So corporations looking to hire someone on the H-1B visa would have to pay $100,000. This is already going to hurt small businesses that can't afford doing something like that. But then on top of that, we've got an introduction of something new called the gold card. We love that gold. Gold is the thing, right? Gold. It's that's $1 million. And you get the gold card, and you know what? You can become instant citizen. Just give us $1 million, and you're a citizen. And I was listening to this on PBS, that public broadcasting system that the administration is trying to defund. Which I read something interesting about the funding that PBS gets is only a small percent from the government. Maybe 10, 15%, which could be a decent amount of money. But when you figure, well, you still got 85%. I don't see how that organization should just collapse and can't function anymore without the government's money. But any rate, what's this H-1B visas? 100,000 each, and the $1 million gold card. What these guys won't think of next? I'll tell you one thing about them: they're very creative. They are very creative. All right, so we got the old Jimmy Kimmel story. He got canned off the air because of things that he said about Charlie Kirk. Except he didn't say anything about Charlie Kirk. He said how people were trying to prove that the murderer, the assassin, was anything but MAGA. So now you see that, right? Nothing about Kirk. Didn't say a thing about Kirk. He's talking about the assassin. But the FCC chairman, under pressure from Trump, said, these kind of things aren't acceptable. And when he said that, he was making a couple of TV executives think twice because they were under the process of doing a merger and they didn't want the FCC to feel offended. So they said, you know what, Jimmy Kimmel, you don't like him, he's out. He can't be on the air anymore. And they kicked him off. And at any rate, ABC started getting all kinds of flack for it. People canceling Disney left and right, canceling Hulu, another platform that would host Jimmy Kimmel, and to the point where the whole Disney website was crashed. You couldn't go on there to cancel your subscription because thousands of people were trying to go in there and do that. And so within like a couple of days, Disney reversed its decision and said, we talked with Jimmy, we had a little talk, we realized what he did wasn't so bad. Yeah, he can come back. But now, meanwhile, two agencies that sponsor ABC, and do I have their names in front of me? Next Star and Sinclair said, well, any ABC affiliates that we sponsor, we're not going to air that, Jimmy Kimmel. And this I thought was interesting. The structures of the TV show. You look at your different TV shows, you just look at a channel and you watch the things in there. But how many layers of organization are there that are necessary in order for you to see this simple thing on a TV? There's different TV stations. What makes a station? Is ABC's a station? And then what's with this Nexstar and Jen and that host them? And if they're not going to host ABC, but ABC is still on, so who is hosting them that is on? Different levels. I never thought about it before, but it's a complicated thing. I guess I should go to business school and learn about that. I don't think so. So what's next? I was watching something about Stephen Miller's comments at Charlie Kirk's funeral. They were discussing, I hear some things about them, but I don't actually go looking at them. I'm trying to look at things I'm interested in. I have to pick and choose. You only have so much time in the day. And in this case, I watched the speech that he said. It was disgusting. It was just horrible. And horrible, disgusting. Why? How? Because of the violence he was instigating, and they were comparing it to which there's this comparison happens a lot lately to 1930s Germany and what Joseph Goebbels and the other Nazi speakers were saying. How these speeches and these things that Trump says and his the people working for him say, they're all taken right out of that playbook. They're all saying similar things. What I thought was interesting about it was he was saying we have to take back the country, and the whole speech was forceful about we have to stand up to the attacks, the assaults upon us, and without ever mentioning anybody. It would be one of those things where if they took you to court and you tried to say, yes, he accused so and so of this and that and violence, I said, I never said anybody's name. I never mentioned anybody. I just said, things are rough these days. People are doing bad things, and we've got to do right things, but not specifying anybody. It's nice the way that, who's good at that? Trump is really great at suggesting things to people who recognize exactly what he's suggesting, but never going over that line where you could say in court, "See, Trump said this." He said, "Well, I just said, people can be get upset about things. So upset about things. What things? I didn't say what things. I just said they get upset." So cool speech patterns. And in the middle of all that, they just happened to mention, since they were saying how this is like Nazi Germany, the Sieg Heil. Everybody knows Sieg Heil, and but what does it mean, Sieg Heil? It actually means praise victory. Imagine that, hail, hail, hail to victory. Now you know what it means. Maybe you knew already. Well, I didn't. There it is. All right. So people running for office, and how us lefties are looking to get more Democrats in, at least to stop the horrors that the Republicans are doing, because they've got the majority. Every Democrat in there can say no, it won't matter because there's more Republicans than Democrats, and they'll always win. So we're hoping more Democrats get in. So I'm talking about one race in Maine against Susan Collins, a Republican senator up there, and she's being challenged actually by two different people, Jordan Wood and Graham Plattner. And I was reading about Jordan Wood, and this guy, it turns out, is really just a corporatist, and not the kind of person we want to replace. Because that's the thing. Yeah, we'd want a Democrat in, and a Democrat's going to be a plus, just to hold back the tide, but sometimes not. I mean, we've got Democrats like Joe Manchin, who didn't, who voted against the Democrats. He voted with the Republicans. So just because you get a Democrat in doesn't mean you're gonna, have a good thing. Then you get the Democrats who change colors after they get in, like Mr. Fetterman, who was anti, Israel's genocide, and now suddenly he's all hail Israel. He's all for Israel. So, at any rate, regarding Jordan Wood, and the other person running is Graham Plattner. And I want to suggest, if anybody likes donating to anybody, I give my donations here and there. They're not much. I give it $10 here, $10 there. And I want to suggest, contributing to Graham Plattner, and he would be the much better choice to win, in my opinion. All right. Owen Jones, love this guy. He's a Brit. He comments from Britain, of course. And he was talking about the flotilla that's nearing Greece, trying to bring aid and Pampers and baby formula and some medicines and some anesthesias and basic things, and that Israel is naming them terrorists, Hamas terrorists. Now, they've also been having drones flying all over them, and they're starting to drop flash grenades on top of them, which, you think, well, they just flash a lot of light, a lot of sound, but there's explosives in these things that make them go off, and they can cause damage. And one of them even released some kind of chemical irritant on one of the boat people, and it wasn't too bad. So I guess they weren't actually putting poison or anything. Who knows what this fluid was? But the thing is, Israel is attacking these boats. Now, I heard a suggestion that possibly Italy might be sending one of its naval vessels to accommodate the flotilla. Don't know if that's actually true or not. But here's Israel. They're attacking them. They do it at night. So I don't know why. So you can't see that the drones are from Israel or something. Well, it's not like the drones have the word Israel written on them. Well, maybe they do. But any rate, drop the drones dropping things on these boats. One of them became disabled. It's like 37 boats. I've heard numbers like 50 boats, but I just heard someone who was reporting from the boat saying we're 37 boats, but there are going to be some more joining them. They're going to be docking or coming near Greece soon. It takes a long time for them. I guess they have sailboats. Sailboats don't go so fast. So, any rate, Israel is starting to attack them. How much they will attack them remains to be seen, because it's a rabid, vicious killers country, and they get away with killing people left and right, and no repercussions. So, they've got blood in them. They've tasted the blood, and so they could very well blow up, any of these ships. It's frightening. Let's see what happens. Arms sales to Ukraine. It's all about gangsters profiteering. That's what this is all about. All these war um, um, supporting industries like the ones that make the guns, the bombs, the bullets, the planes, the tanks, the everything, right? They're just for the wars, war, 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 and they're all gangsters, and they're all of in every country there's war gangsters, and this is what they are. They control what we do. So many people, if you ask the people in the street, don't want the war. The Ukrainians don't want the war anymore. They would like to have a peace. They would like to just give me any kind of settlement, right? But the United States doesn't want a settlement. NATO doesn't want a settlement. They're the ones calling the shots, not the Ukrainian people. Gangsters ruling us. So there you go with that. The UN is becoming useless. Some people say the UN always has been useless, and maybe in some sense, yes. What's the UN good for? Uh, It's good for a place to have mutual conversations, I suppose. Some place where you've already got the ambassadors, the people to talk about things, air things out. They don't actually do things. You've got an international criminal court, which has no power. You don't have any military in the UN. I mean, there are some UN peacekeeping forces, but they're not any serious adversaries. No one would ever put them to actually start fighting some other country. They might be there to observe a peace. Everyone's going to leave them be. They're not going to attack them too much. They're just there for peacekeeping. But the UN doesn't do too much. And what more do you expect, right? Every country wants its own sovereignty. No one wants to give it up yet, and so that it's only natural, actually. But it's a good place for conversation and seeing where the world stands. Like when every country in the UN General Assembly votes to recognize that Israel's committing a genocide, you see who votes against that idea or not. And everyone said, yeah, it's a genocide, except the United States. So, I mean, you get to see what the moral standings are of every country. All right, trans people. They're being there's a suggestion of categorizing any crime committed by a trans person as a nihilistic, violent extremist. A nihilistic. I love that word, nihilistic. I mean, whoever uses nihilistic, it sort of means like nothing. We don't have any values about anything, or nothing should be supported. There should be no structures, no anything. And a nihilistic, violent extreme. Well, what's the idea here? Well, it's just so we can have a ratchet up whatever kind of penalties we want to place on anyone who does any shooting of anyone who happens to be trans when they do it. Instead of getting the usual 5 years, whatever it is, we can get the death penalty, or they can get life. They should be treated, much more significantly. It's like when you have a hate crime, right? A white guy goes up against some black people because they're just because they're black, and whatever the crime is that they commit, and there are penalties for it, you ratchet it up and say, well, now we're going to make those penalties double because of the nature of it. I don't know what I think about that, really. I think a crime is a crime, and but that's a debatable thing, right? So, speaking of blacks and whites, some black fellow was sitting on a train, and a woman didn't like the way he was sitting, and called the police. And the police come, and they want to question him. They take him off the train, have him at the station. They want to see his ID, ask him where he's coming and going. And so, this is really pathetic, and it makes me want to comment about just the idea when anybody calls the police and says something about someone. These police and all the stories I read, they never go to the person. That's not their first stop. Should be the person who filed the complaint, made the call, and get the details from that person. Then they go to the person that it's about, and they start, Hole, we got to talk to you. We got to ask everything about you. And if you sit there and say, oh, I'm just sitting here, I'm minding my own business. Well, that person said you had a gun. Do you have a gun? No, I don't have a gun. Let me get your ID. Let me get everything about you. And, you know, I'm thinking, wow, this would be a great way if you wanted to harass somebody that you've got it in for. Just, go out in the street, or just call the police and say, so and so that they were brandishing a gun, and they were talking about killing the president. Yeah, That's right. They were out there. And so there you go. The police knock on his door at the middle of the night or the day or whatever. They go to the workplace and harass the guy because all you have to do is call and say whatever you want about a person. And now the police are going to bother you and never talk with the person who placed the call in the first place. It's pretty terrible. Israel, no, did that. All right. I got on to new subject electronics, computers. I'm a computer person. I worked for 20 years repairing computers, working on computers. And Huawei, the Chinese company, releases a new ternary chip. A ternary. What's a ternary? Well, everything is binary in computers, ones and zeros, electronics. It doesn't have to be ones and zeros, but there's a reason why it's ones and zeros because electricity and voltages and transistors work very easily when there's no electricity. The nothing's going to happen, and when there is electricity, like say a 5 volts, goes through, then something does happen. So between this nothing and the something, you've got ones and zeros, and these get written into code, and it all works fine. Now, what happens if you try to introduce a third one, a one and a zero, and and a two? Or a -1, a 0, and a 1. What happens? Well, the same thing. Anytime something changes, it notices the change. But the problems are that with these very tiny currents and these very tiny transistors, there could be errors introduced between was that a 1 or was that a 1.5? Was that a 0 or a 1? You're not sure because errors come in. Well, now with the developments in technology we have and the abilities to more finely determine things. The ternary idea, the idea of having three states determining the work, is being developed. It actually was developed a long time ago. It never got the traction that the binary did. And someone that I watched, I should have written her name because I think she's an interesting website, and she was talking about right now we use silicon, but a good replacement coming up or being thought about is graphene and carbon nanotube transistors. So there you go for you computer people that are interested in technology. The old ternary thing is getting a little attention right now. All right, and along those lines, just thinking about these things, the person was talking about patents. If you're going to go develop new ternary or new computer things, you want to get it patented, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes you don't want it patented. Why would that be? Because once you get it patented, it's out in the public domain and anybody can copy it. Well, isn't that the part of a patent? Yeah, that's the part of a patent. Well, do you think it always works? No. So actually, a lot of times, it becomes what you call proprietary, where we're not telling you how we got it, how we did it, and this way you can't get it. So that's the way it's got to be sometimes. All right, the last thing, talking about miles and meters. Miles and meters. Most of the world uses meters. The United States, uses miles, and this person was going into a whole story about the different measurement systems that developed over time, and it was a truly fascinating and a fun thing to watch. But the end of it is, I just wanted to mention that in terms of the metric system, that the whole world uses it except three countries: Burma, Liberia, and the United States. So there you go. There we go. That's the broadcast for today. I thought it was very interesting. Of course, I thought it was interesting. I picked all the things that I was interested in. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you keep an eye out for Generally Speaking, and I hope to see you again. And please leave a comment. I would like to see, I don't get any comments. I want to know that I'm not just being watched by bots. That would be terrible. Say hello from wherever you are or how much you enjoy me. And otherwise, have a nice day.